In Missouri, our revenue collections are certainly not as bad as some of the surrounding states, certainly not as bad as Florida or California or Arizona, but we're about in the middle of the pack. In fiscal year 2009, our revenue was down 6.9%. I'm sure many members of this committee have already heard that statistic. The importance of that is that we ended fiscal year 09 at almost $800 million, around $780 million, below the level that was assumed in last year's budget. And I will say that last year's revenue growth that was assumed in the budget was not by any means outside of the ordinary. So we ended almost $800 million below where we anticipated we would be when the 09 budget was approved. The governor did make cuts last year. He continues to make cuts. But I think the other thing that really that 09 number leads us to understand is that our base for fiscal year 10 is much lower than we anticipated. So if you look at the number that was assumed in the budget for the fiscal year 10 appropriations that were approved by the legislature, because of that 6.9% decline last year, we would need growth this year in our revenue of 4.2%. I don't think anybody in this room believes that our revenue collections are going to grow by 4.2% in the current year. I think we would be all very pleasantly surprised if that happened and would all jointly be very happy about that news. But the simple fact is that we can't assume that's going to happen with the actions that we're taking. So the governor has already, for this year, cut spending by $430 million. He may need to make additional reductions. We're waiting to see what the first quarter looks like. We certainly don't want to take action until we have a full quarter's worth of revenue collection data. A lot of variance between the months, so we want to wait to see if we have it once we have a full quarter. At the end of August, so for July and August compared to last July and August, we were down 5.6%. So getting to 4.2% increase from that level is probably a little bit optimistic. So we're assuming a continued decline in the revenue collections, and that is the assumption that the governor based his decisions on when he reduced spending by $430 million. We all know that our revenue will eventually turn around. The economy is going to rebound. Our revenue collections will pick up. I think the big unknown right now is when is that going to happen. And economists are pretty much still not in consensus about that. I think the general belief is that we're going to start seeing some rebound, and actually are now. What we haven't seen yet is a rebound in employment. Businesses are very concerned about bringing employees back. They don't want to get ahead of the curve. So they are being very hesitant about hiring new people. I believe that if you looked at general economic analysis on this, mostly they're going to say that the employment rate will start to improve after the calendar year flips. So nothing this calendar year, possibly starting early next calendar year. That may, unfortunately, at this point in time, still be an optimistic projection. It's quite possible that you're not going to see that begin to happen until the weather starts to get better. Dead of winter is probably not the time that you're going to see unemployment really improve. For Missouri, that means that we won't see a rebound in our revenue collections until late in the fiscal year or possibly going into the following fiscal year. And that's not unique to Missouri by any stretch of the imagination. It's what all states are facing. So we're not unique. We're certainly about in the middle of the pack. And we have to take actions to make sure the budget stays balanced based on that reality. Even with a significant rebound in our revenue, and even with the stabilization dollars, we are going to have to continue to make deep cuts in our spending. So these dollars will not help us avoid those deep cuts. They're simply going to lessen those deep cuts. And that is going to continue not only for the current year, but going forward into the next couple of years. We're going to have to do a very, very thorough scrubbing of our spending. I think what the stabilization dollars have allowed us to do is to make those decisions over time so that we can make the best decisions possible in how to reduce the budget rather than having to just lop things off to get through the current couple of fiscal years. So that's really kind of an overview of the stabilization dollars, how they fit into our broader budget situation, and when I say budget, I mean revenue collection situation. This is a revenue problem. And although those stabilization dollars are a critical component, they are certainly not the only component, and possibly, and really not the largest, because they are at a short-term basis and will go away eventually. And so we're going to have to right-size this budget based on that reality.